October 24th, 2025. A suspected drug boat erupts in flames under U.S. fire in the Caribbean. The first night strike of a wave that's left 6 dead and stunned the region. Washington claims a war with transnational gangs like Tren de Aragua has entered a new phase, with military force replacing the old game of seizures and arrests. But what drove the U.S. to change the rules at sea? And what happens when the war on cartels turns lethal in international waters? Just after midnight on October 24, 2025, U.S. military surveillance tracked a small vessel running dark through international waters of the Caribbean Sea. Intelligence teams flagged the boat as a likely drug runner, moving along a corridor long used for cocaine shipments out of northern South America. Within minutes, the order came down. U.S. platforms, operating under Joint Interagency Task Force South, coordinated the strike. The attack itself was swift. A single explosion lit up the night, captured in a grainy infrared clip released hours later by Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth on social media. The footage showed a pinpoint blast and the vessel engulfed in flames, then darkness. Officials confirmed 6 fatalities, no survivors, no cargo recovered. The strike was publicly described as the first nighttime operation of the campaign and the 10th lethal engagement since early September. U.S. statements alleged the boat was linked to Tren de Aragua, a Venezuelan criminal network, but released no supporting evidence. The announcement landed hard across the region. News outlets replayed the explosion clip on loop, while shipping trackers noted abrupt course changes by commercial vessels near the strike zone. In Washington, the Pentagon defended the action as a necessary blow against transnational gangs, citing a new posture that treats certain traffickers as terrorist actors. Regional leaders demanded answers about the rules of engagement and the risks to civilian traffic. The night strike, with its 6 deaths and viral blast footage, set a new precedent for how the U.S. now wages its maritime campaign against suspected cartel targets. In the weeks before the October 24th strike, U.S. operations accelerated across the Caribbean and spilled into the Eastern Pacific. Reports tallied 9 publicly acknowledged strikes since early September, each carried out against suspected drug vessels moving along established smuggling corridors. On October 21st and 22nd, 2 separate attacks were confirmed off Colombia's Pacific coast, marking the first time the campaign extended beyond the Caribbean. The Pentagon also authorized a bomber flyby along Venezuela's coastline, a move that signaled both reach and readiness to regional observers. Officials repeatedly named Tren de Aragua as a primary target. The group, rooted in Venezuela's prison system, has grown into a transnational criminal network with a reputation for violence and rapid adaptation. While U.S. statements linked Tren de Aragua to several of the targeted vessels, no public evidence has been released to confirm the group's direct role in maritime smuggling. Critics in Congress and across Latin America have questioned the sufficiency of the intelligence, but the administration maintains that these gangs now pose a threat akin to terrorist organizations. The operational map now stretches from the Windward Passage and Yucatan Channel to the approaches off Ecuador and Colombia. Military planners have expanded patrols and surveillance flights, tracking vessels that run dark and avoid transponders, often launching from remote stretches of the Venezuelan and Colombian coastlines. Each new strike is announced in Washington, its location plotted on an expanding grid of interdiction points. The tempo and reach of these operations suggest a campaign designed to disrupt not just individual shipments, but the networks and safe corridors that have enabled years of trafficking across the hemisphere. At sea, the standard playbook for U.S. maritime drug interdiction runs on a well-rehearsed sequence. Surveillance platforms, Navy P-8 Poseidon patrol aircraft, Coast Guard HC-144s, and MQ-9 drones scan busy shipping lanes and remote coastal waters, searching for small craft running without AIS transponders. These vessels, often painted in dull blues or grays to blend with the sea, slip away from known launch points along the Venezuelan and Colombian coasts. Pattern-of-life analysis helps intelligence teams anticipate departures, tracking clusters of activity on radar and satellite feeds. Once a suspect vessel is detected, patrol aircraft maintain contact, relaying real-time coordinates to nearby Coast Guard cutters or partner nation patrol boats. Interdiction teams, often Coast Guard law enforcement detachments, or LEDETs, prepare for boarding. Helicopters from HYTRON detachments can be launched to disable engines with precision fire if a go-fast boat tries to outrun pursuit. On deck, boarding teams conduct right-of-visit queries, checking documents and questioning crews under the authority of the Maritime Drug Law Enforcement Act. The process is methodical. Collect evidence, secure the vessel, detain the crew, and seize any contraband. Bales of cocaine, sometimes marked with unique cartel codes, are offloaded and stacked on cutter decks. Iconic images that have defined the counter-narcotics mission for decades. Suspects are transferred for prosecution, facing trial in U.S. federal courts or in partner countries. Each step leaves a trail of documentation, from radar tracks to arrest logs and courtroom records. For years, this chain of detection, boarding, and legal handoff has been the backbone of maritime drug enforcement, balancing operational reach with evidentiary standards and international law. At the heart of U.S. maritime drug enforcement stands Joint Interagency Task Force South, headquartered in Key West, Florida. Since the 1990s, this command center has coordinated detection and interdiction efforts across the Caribbean and Eastern Pacific, bringing together U.S. military, Coast Guard, and partner nation forces. In 2012, Operation Martillo launched as a multinational campaign, combining patrols from the United States, Panama, Colombia, and more than a dozen other countries. Over the years, these joint operations have produced a steady stream of recognizable images. Coast Guard cutters closing on go-fast boats, helicopters hovering low over blue water, and bales of cocaine stacked on steel decks. Patrol aircraft like the Navy P-3 and P-8 have tracked semi-submersibles and low-profile vessels, while law enforcement detachments have conducted thousands of boardings along corridors stretching from the Panama, Colombia littoral to the Yucatan Channel. Each seizure, each offload at ports like Miami Beach and Port Everglades has reinforced the sense of a coordinated, persistent campaign. This architecture, built on international cooperation and years of practice, serves as the foundation for every new tactic and escalation in the maritime counter-drug war. The redeployment order for the USS Gerald R. and its strike group on October 24, 2025, brought a new dimension to maritime operations in the Caribbean and Eastern Pacific. With the Ford's arrival, U.S. Southern Command gained access to an arsenal of sensors and aircraft designed for persistent surveillance and rapid interdiction. The carrier's air wing, equipped with airborne early warning planes, helicopters, and intelligence-gathering platforms, expanded radar coverage over critical choke points, stretching from the Windward Passage to the approaches off the Galapagos. Destroyers and cruisers in the group added surface and subsurface tracking, filling gaps in the maritime domain awareness grid. For carrier crews, the mission meant a shift from NATO deterrence patrols in the Adriatic to high-tempo operations over drug transit corridors. Patrol flights launched from the Ford could loiter for hours, tracking vessels that run without transponders or slip through the clutter of commercial shipping. This surge in air and sea coverage increased the likelihood of detecting suspect craft before they reached Central America or the U.S. coastline. For traffickers, the presence of a carrier group raised the risk of interception at every stage of the journey, tightening the net across some of the hemisphere's busiest smuggling routes. The legal rationale for these maritime strikes rests on the President's Article 2 authority, with officials describing the operations as necessary acts of self-defense against transnational criminal threats. In public statements, the administration has invoked a 2025 policy, treating some gangs and cartels as terrorist organizations, arguing that this posture allows for limited military force at sea without congressional approval. Legal scholars and members of Congress have questioned this approach, noting the absence of public office of legal counsel memos or detailed executive directives. Critics argue that bypassing traditional arrest and prosecution in favor of lethal action risks eroding long-standing norms of maritime law enforcement and blurs the line between police work and warfare. Regional leaders have voiced strong objections, especially where strikes occurred near exclusive economic zones. Governments in the Caribbean and Latin America have warned of escalation, misidentification, and humanitarian risks, especially when small vessels are destroyed in busy shipping corridors. Venezuela and several Caribbean states have filed diplomatic protests, demanding clarity on rules of engagement and warning of potential retaliation if national waters are breached. In Washington, oversight bodies are preparing for hearings on the legal basis and humanitarian consequences of these strikes. The coming months will test the administration's legal claims, with court challenges, legislative scrutiny, and regional flashpoints all in play. Watch for new hearings on Article 2 authority, diplomatic protests over exclusive economic zone boundaries, and reports of near misses or misidentified vessels. As hurricane season approaches, shifting smuggling routes and publicized drug seizures will offer further signals of how this campaign and its legitimacy will be judged. On October 24, 2025, the United States carried out its first nighttime strike of the current campaign, killing 6 people on a suspected drug-running vessel in the Caribbean. This marked the 10th publicly confirmed strike since early September and signaled a departure from decades of interdiction tactics that focused on boarding and prosecution. Documents confirm that the USS Gerald R. Ford carrier group was redeployed to U.S. Southern Command, expanding operations into both the Caribbean and Eastern Pacific. While U.S. officials cite ties to the Tren de Aragua network and claim authority under Article 2 and new terrorist designations, regional governments have issued formal protests and legal questions remain unresolved. The full intelligence behind target selection and the long-term impact on maritime law are still classified. As the campaign continues under the framework built by Joint Interagency Task Force South and Operation Martillo, one fact is clear. U.S. maritime counter-narcotics operations have entered a new phase, with consequences that will be measured in both security outcomes and diplomatic responses.